So I am Katya Ellis. I'm the host of today's webinar. My role is with the Small Business Mentoring Service. I'm a business mentor that I've been doing with them for 10 years. I've also been external assessor for the City of Melbourne for the grants, meaning that and we'll cover this obviously in today's session, but the first review of your grants is done internally to make sure that you've fulfilled all the criteria. And then usually the grants are passed on to external panel members, which are usually experienced business consultants and advisors and mentors that can review and score your application to verify what the City of Melbourne is thinking, but also that multiple pairs of eyes are looking at the validity of your application. So I spent about maybe a total of 8 years being on the external panel, but the majority of my work was pre and during COVID. And since then, I've stepped back a little bit because I'm teaching at RMIT as well, and I find that grant assessing and marking assignments is quite similar. And I only have so much capacity to go through hundreds of pages of text. So now I'm focusing more on the advisory component. So yes, as a mentor, I help businesses with, understanding applications and reviewing the individual cases. And as a former assessor, I have insight into what the council is looking for when they're looking through the application. So without further ado, let me just add this person in, and then what we'll do is I'll hide my face, so then we focus on the presentation. All right, 1 second. Okay, great. All right, so yes, I've done my introduction. So today we're talking about how to apply for grants with confidence. Excuse me, sorry, we've got a bit too quick. So we will cover firstly, grants at a glance. Hopefully you've read through the information provided by the council, but we will overview that as well. Your eligibility essentials, so what you must have before you can apply. Then, of course, writing the winning application in consideration to assessment criteria. Smarty grants and how you submit, and then of course just a little look at common pitfalls and what support is available to help guide you through the process. So grants at a glance. So the grant rounds have been adjusted slightly this year. So there's a few that are similar to last year, but there's a couple of variants that have changed. Mainly the small business grant and the business expansion grant are quite similar with just some adjustment to the criteria. And then, of course, there's the social enterprise and the shop front, which I think the shop front grant started last year and have been successful. So they're continuing that as well. Again, generally, though some of the terms of the grants may change, the general application process and what's considered remains the same. So what these grants will support is equipment and technology upgrades, fit outs and minor capital work. So it means that if you are getting a new property as part of this grant, you can pay for the tables and the chairs and walls and whatever else might be required as part of this. Shop front improvements, if you need signage and lighting, and digital marketing, e-commerce services are also approved. Business growth and innovation projects. So again, what you're going to have to do is justify what you'll be spending money on, and what is preferred is clear, itemized and quoted elements that you need for these projects. Okay, so things like rents, wages, if we have a look at what's not covered, is too ambiguous, but also they don't want to be investing in operations. It's more investment in improvement to give you a better chance of success as a business. So anything that you've already spent will not be covered. bills, basically anything business as usual, operations, stock and inventory, loans and debt repayment are not covered. Now, I just want to highlight an important element here. So digital marketing, e-commerce can fundamentally be done by an employee. However, as wages are not covered, what you would be expected to do is get quotes from specialist providers in this area in order to make that an eligible expense. Okay, so even if you've hired a marketing person, unfortunately, their work is not covered as part of this grant. So, so spotting a good match, 3 things to check before you're applying. Of course, read the guidelines carefully, and I'll emphasize that component as we go throughout. Check eligibility and funding priorities. Make sure your project is ready, realistic, and aligned. So the golden rules. So answer the questions that have been asked, not the ones that you wish had been asked. So what people are frightened about when they're applying for grants is that they might not be a very good writer in their opinion. The good thing is that we're not really looking for creative writing and your literary capabilities. We're looking for direct answers to the questions because we're looking for alignment to the criteria related to the grant. So when people, some of the mistakes that I see is really people being too creative, too many adjectives and creative words just to emphasize how amazing their business is, but they're not directly addressing the question. So keep dot point form, directly answer it, and that's all that it needs. Again, stay relevant and direct and evidence-based. So don't say you're the best bakery in the neighborhood. How can you validate that you're the best? Every response should link back to the assessment criteria, no generic fluff, please. So again, it's that messaging that just, you don't need to fill it up with words, just answer the question. Assessors are looking for, through maybe hundreds potentially of applications. So we are scanning very quickly for the relevant answers. So again, your creative writing expertise becomes less relevant and more getting to the point. So I'm looking for things that I need to know in order to give you the marks to get you the grant. Okay, so just dot points, stick to the point that you can validate and highlight it. All right, so pitfalls, not reading the guidelines carefully. So I'm sure you have read them, but we time and time again that we see that people apply without basic requirements met, or things like having a debt to the council, or you know, maybe being outside the council zone, right? So we just make sure that you do fit. People will check, and you don't just try your luck, okay? It will be caught, and unfortunately you will be wasting your time if you don't fit that basic eligibility criteria. Make sure you attach all the required documents. If you are concerned, and we'll touch on that a bit more, but if you're concerned that you might not have a document because of where you are at the business, say if you're a startup, then you would just speak to the council. And again, we've got information on who to contact about how to bypass that issue if it's stopping you from getting the application through. Writing vague responses. So yes, I said not to, get to the point, but again, don't be too vague. So in case on point here, we want to paint a mural versus we want to paint a heritage style mural with a local artist by January. So you can still see it's getting to the point, but it elaborates a little bit on points of interest, which would be, heritage style artists, whatever it might be. Let me just double check that to make sure that there's no one else waiting, just because I'm managing the admin. Okay, so let me just, okay. Not answering assessment criteria and submitting late or rushing the final hours. So with assessment criteria, I find that that's one of the key areas and despite our best effort to include this information in the form and the guidelines, often people still feel that they need to tell the assessors what they think that they should know, rather than addressing the criteria. And I'll share with you a bit of key insights a bit later when we have a look at their guidelines. But like to give you an example, so my husband would always hear me complain when I was an assessor that people are just not answering the assessment criteria, and how frustrating it is because I can't give them the money because they haven't answered the basic questions. And his workplace was applying for a grant not related to this, but he said to his colleague, make sure you follow the criteria, because he knew from me that it was really important to follow the criteria. And of course, the colleague did not follow the criteria, and the heavy weighted items in certain criteria elements did not get answered sufficiently and so forth. So then he's like, where's the criteria? And the colleague was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So then they went back. All grants and award category, even if it's business awards or whatever you might be applying for, there's a clear criteria guidelines, and you need to address them like you do with any, if you're studying at university and you have to complete an assignment, there's always criteria and guidelines. So make sure you're as precisely aligned to that as possible, because I always say the high distinction students are not the smartest, they just know how to align to the criteria. And we'll dive into a bit more of that later. So, okay, here's our halftime question option. So does anyone have a question right now? And if not, then we'll move on and leave the questions to the end. A couple of minutes, you can put it in chat or turn on your microphone. All right, I'll take that as a, let's move on. All right, so eligibility essential. So without these, there's literally no point in applying. So you are a legally constituted entity or registered business, whether you're a sole trader or a partnership or a company, it doesn't matter, but you must be a registered business. So it's not a side hustle hobby. Commercial lease or ownership of commercial property. So if you don't have that and you're potentially applying for the shop front, obviously this doesn't directly apply to you, but you need to be generally in the city of Melbourne in order to be eligible for any of the City of Melbourne grants, of course. If you're coming into the City of Melbourne and are hoping to leverage this grant as to expand to the City of Melbourne, that can be an option, but I would again check your individual case with the information desk, because sometimes it just might be outside the scope. But generally, they do want people coming in and taking up shop fronts. So even if you are based in another council zone, you might be eligible just because you found a commercial property you want to use. So that's a good time to do it. Meet the business. Oh, and in terms of say, if you are thinking, if you're not in the city and you're not doing the shop front, but kind of want to get access to these grants, we have seen instances where people sign up to those virtual offices to have a local address. And of course, we're aware of people doing this. So there is some rules around, I think you need to be in the City of Melbourne zone for 3 years to be eligible for these grants. Again, if that applies to you, just contact this help desk to confirm if you're eligible. Meet the business turnover requirements. So obviously there's startup grants and there's business expansion grants. So generally they're not too obsessed with how much you're already making, but there is an element of product validation that you need to show that there is customers for your product. Demonstrate sufficient funds to do the project without the grant. So this is one of the most important things, I think, is because obviously of what I do, I get a lot of business mentoring clients asking what they can apply for to get money to start their business because they have no money. Unfortunately, this is where generally these kinds of initiatives support people that can actually fund themselves without the support. So you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet before then they go, oh, that's a good idea. We can support this and make it a bit easier for you, okay? So unfortunately, as much as sometimes it would be great to just have that little bit of startup injection because you don't have any money, generally that's when they won't give you the money, which is kind of ironic. I understand that, but The reason being is that they want to support initiatives that are independent and therefore economically sustainable, as opposed to someone that just wants to have a go, and if they get $5,000 from the council, great, they'll get it started, and if not, it just doesn't matter. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you are looking at the startup grants, it's really important that you're not relying on the money from the council entirely to start your business. So meet the project requirements. So there's the different streams, which we'll touch on again. Hold all the necessary insurances, permits and licenses. Insurance in place of no less than 20 million and no outstanding acquittal or debts to council. Now, with this 20 million insurance public liability, what I want to highlight here is you might be, again, in a virtual office environment and a service provider, and you might be looking to start a shopfront service business, argument's sake. So therefore, you probably don't need the insurance at this point in time because you don't have any public liability. So if that's your case, please contact the help desk again and just confirm what they would require from you, because you might just want to start with, a quote, and then once the grant is confirmed and you're getting the shop front, for example, then you would want to have the insurance and they'll have to check your documents again anyway. But it's saying it's a must, but I would just be questioning if you are not in a position where public liability is an issue yet, if it's worth you getting the insurance at this point, if it's not going to go ahead in terms of a grant. So don't waste your time if your application does not meet core criteria. If you're a government or political organisation, so brand alignment and endorsement, of course, if you're a council, is important. So if you are, I guess, have a business that might be potentially risky or doesn't align with general values like gambling, for example, you probably would, it's not that you're not allowed to apply, but they're more likely to be looking to support businesses that align with overall values than something that's controversial or risky. So council employees and family members cannot apply. Poor compliance history, or if you've got a criminal record, duplicate or refused applications. So if you've tried this case before in the same year, you can't do it again, which usually doesn't happen because people are clear that they're applying, once, but just emphasizing do not try multiple times with different applications. And inappropriate business types, so large franchises, companies, and unincorporated associations. So we're looking at small business. This is to support small business. So if you are a franchise, that is, generally deemed as part of a large company. So again, if you're not sure, you can contact and find out if your particular case is relevant, because I know there are some small franchises as well that might qualify. Okay, proof you will need: documents to back up your claims. Obviously, your ABN and business registration, your lease agreement, if relevant, insurance certificate, and business plans and financials. So when it comes to this information, it doesn't have to be your profit and loss for the last, years and overly detailed, but it needs to be very clear that it aligns with what the grants are looking for. So, if you're a startup, obviously you don't have a profit and loss, but what are your expected projected growth if you get this grant, and basically any validation if you have had any sales, something that proves your capacity there. So if you've got an accountant, usually it's a great idea to just get their help at this point to get all the financials, the forecast, and anything relevant that's existing. Quotes for funded items. So everything you're essentially asking for the grant money for should come with a quote. As an assessor, I've seen instances that people don't include a quote, so then the grant gets held pending confirmation of the quote. So you might as well just get the quote. If something is the assessors do have the power to question if the quote seems excessive for what you're asking for. So don't just, get the nearest quote available, make sure that there is options, that the value is evident. And of course, optional support documents, you don't need to do too many, just for the sake of having documents, but anything that's relevant, of course, please include. All right, so another opportunity to ask any questions on eligibility essentials. I think if people are happy to wait to the end, then we'll just continue along.
I'm sorry, but can I just ask something quickly?
Sure.
I have had my business registered since October in 2023, so 2 years.
Yes.
And I was looking at the eligibility requirements on your landing page for the business grant. And it says copy of a commercial lease with a minimum of 3 years. Does that mean I'm supposed to have been in business for 3 years before I can apply for this grant? Or do I need...
Look, are you applying for expansion or startup?
Expansion.
Look, I think this is one of those cases where check with them for your individual case, but I think it would be understandable that you are you're not exactly starting from scratch today, but you haven't been around long enough for the 3 years. So just double check that one, because I think there might be a business case that people should be reasonable in that case. Okay, but if not, then you might be eligible next year. But keep in mind that the business expansion grant is for new projects only. So if you are looking to do something new and you do it this year, but you're not eligible for the grant for whatever reason, then next year it would have to be kind of come across at least as a new project again. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. All right. Oh, okay. We've got Angela.
Yeah, thanks. I just have a question. So I was looking at, we're not actually based in the city of Melbourne, but want to have a commercial space in the city of Melbourne. We're actually manufacturing, but we would like a retail space, but probably weren't going to apply for the shopfront one because we probably don't want a ground level, shopfront thing. But my question is, so when you have to have evidence of commercial leases or quotes for fit out and stuff like that, we were looking at this grant to sort of fast track what we were intending to do. So, we would be able to do it maybe next year rather than wait another year. But for that reason, we haven't actually got a commercial space with a lease. So it'd be difficult to get actual quotes to do fit outs and stuff like that. Is it still possible to apply for maybe an expansion grant or a startup one?
Yes. Okay. So I have seen in the past, and again, I'm not sure if this particular round in this case is enabling people to move to the city of Melbourne as part of the grant, because it's obviously about innovation and, vibrance and whatever. So again, it's probably a question best for the grants team, but in the case that, like say if you are eligible and you are still looking for a property, you would then just provide potentially an estimate on how much you would plan to spend based on your budget. Yeah. And because you have the money, so if, I don't know if you've read the documents, but there's few streams. There's, just full funding up to 25,000, I believe. That doesn't require co-contribution. And then there's the more money. So you could potentially apply for the sort of the bigger fit out option, and because obviously you'll be doing it anyway, so you can do a significant co-contribution there.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's move along. All right, so writing to win assessment criteria. Okay, so the assessment panel. So then your application goes to internal staff from the council first. So anyone that's really not eligible will be eliminated at that point. And then applications are scored individually and competitively. So what that means is we're basically just giving a score based on how much we believe that you align with the criteria. In some environments, like certain universities, there's a standard deviation type scoring where you have to have a certain numbers between certain numbers and whatever. So this is purely based on the assessor's ability to assess your alignment with criteria, and it doesn't matter what other people are doing. So we are not looking at, say, we don't have a pool of, say, a certain amount of, there is a budget, but it doesn't matter so much in this case because we're more looking for a score alignment first, and how many people are in that space, and then it gets cascaded down to lower scoring people. So there's not a sort of a set grant amount, and then we're comparing apples and oranges to try to make sure that everyone gets a little bit of it. We're just looking more for scores first and foremost, and then it's funds are allocated down the line. So focus is on alignment with criteria, evidence and impact. I mean, that's quite straightforward, but yeah, the more evidence you could show that what you're saying is legitimate and not just a dream, the more likely you're to score better. No resubmissions, panel will only see what you submit, and your writing for busy people make it easy to score you well. So that's where I'm sort of saying, don't worry too much about creative adjectives, get to the point and, make sure the point is really clear, but, it's not a thesis. So the process is, eligibility check, assessment against criteria, scored for quality, reviewed by one other person. So that's usually potentially the external assessors are there. And then high scoring applications are prioritized, and then money is allocated based on that, and then it just cascades down until the fund is spent. So what do assessors look for? Which we've touched on the criteria, but project relevance, does the proposed plan align with grants, goals and priorities? And again, I will highlight in the information document that the council has provided on their website what that specifically relates to. So business capability, can the applicant deliver this project successfully? So this is, your capacity to do it. If the project sounds good, but it might be too far-fetched, the assessors can, from, say, my perspective, I was able to escalate it and say, look, it sounds good in theory, but I'm just not sure if it actually, if they've got the capacity to do it, if it's too ambitious, for example. Broader benefit will create economic, social and community value. So, of course, it's community engagement, it's employment, vibrance of the city. All of these factors are really important. And again, budget realism, reasonable and clearly supported by evidence are the costs that were mentioned before. Is it a realistic application? And yeah, make sure it's easy for us to find the documents. And then this is examples for written responses. So I'm not going to read this out word for word. You can take a screenshot, but you also get the slides. Now, this reminds me to mention AI use, because I can actually see, I did digital marketing at RMIT, so I can tell you that AI use is very evident once you know what you're looking for. So, of course, it's a really great tool to use. What is really obvious is when it's 100% reliance on AI, because the way the AI answers questions, it's like broad with, again, those adjectives, but it's not deep. Okay, and we want that depth that's, again, aligned with criteria. So by all means use it, but make sure you rework the answers to reflect how you would say it, okay? Because otherwise we're just reading these sort of meaningless adjectives and it's just not contributing to the quality of your application, okay? Again, some more examples, which let's just not read word for word, but you can read that later. So stripes, not polka dots. I'm re-emphasizing, so make sure you're answering the questions and not telling us what you think we should know about you if the question isn't there for it. Avoid filler, vague language, or passion with purpose. This is what I'm saying, thesis and adjectives, just not necessary. So don't be tempted to copy and paste from another grant. Tailor your answers. Look, I mean, obviously you can copy and paste and tailor, that's fine. We are focusing here on basically, it's best to write the grant not in Smarty Grants, and we'll touch on Smarty Grants in a second. Just, you can download the form, you've got the questions, and answer them there. You can tweak them, copy and paste, AI, mix it all together in a good response, and then paste it in your application to Smarty Grants before you submit. There's been instances where people go straight into Smarty Grants and then something crashes and they lose what they've written, which is obviously disappointing. So make sure you do it offline first, and then it'll be easy to copy and paste it into the application form. 1 second, I think there might be someone trying to enter. Okay. All right, so use examples that match the question, not just your best story. Make the assessor say, yes, this is exactly what we're looking for. Okay, so strong budget. Assessors are looking for clarity of realism value, not the cheapest option, but a well-justified one. So a good example is 2,400, elaborating on what you're going to be spending it on, and with a quote attached. And then just $2,000 on signage is a weak example. So in past experience, again, I can't say if it's been adjusted for this particular grant, but usually it's pretty consistent, is say that when you provide the itemized list of things, an assessor can actually say, we like this application overall, but we don't think that we want to spend $2,000 on signage because it doesn't make sense in this application. So you want to make sure that you clearly justify everything you're applying for, so then you can get the full money that you've asked for. Top tips: break large items into components, reference quote suppliers or past projects. So Angela, the question you had earlier around fit outs and not knowing how much it's going to be, but hopefully potentially you do have some understanding or experience with fit out, so you can have an educated guesstimate on what that could be. But again, if you could get some quotes, but roughly that would be more supportive of rather than estimates. So round numbers. Obviously, if you've been given a quote, then use the number rather than just, again, random numbers that you've plucked out. And make your budget match your written project description where possible. Okay. And name your quotes properly as well. So that means that we can match it to the line items. Common weak responses. What makes assessors lose confidence fast? Vague statements with no evidence. We want to stand out versus we will repaint and install lighting by December. Generic answers not tailored to the grant. We love our community isn't enough. Show how you will benefit the locality. Missing or inconsistent attachments. I think that's pretty clear. Ignoring the weighting. So spending 3 paragraphs on who you are and 1 line on your business plan. So this is, again, that alignment with criteria that we keep emphasizing. So I will show you the criteria and emphasize how it gives you clear insight into how much time and energy you should be spending on each element. And copy and paste from other grants. So clearly, this is a point here because assessors do see answers that are not aligned with the question. So make sure, at least if you're copying and pasting, it's the relevant bit. Okay, so we'll throw it back to question time if anyone has about assessment criteria. I will show you the bits that I'm mentioning. It's just I'm conscious of flicking between tabs in case something goes wrong. So once we're finished with the presentation, I will share the other documents that I just wanted to highlight to you. All right, we'll move along. So Smarty Grants, which is the system that they use. A lot of councils use Smarty Grants. So read the guidelines, register to log in. So fortunately, you don't have to actually register at this point. In the past, you had to register to even see the form. Now the form is publicly available. You can have a look at it before you register. As I mentioned, prepare your application offline first. Because things can really go wrong, and then it means you also have the document. I find that grant and business award applications, I says business awards as well, that's why I mentioned that, are actually a really great way to summarize what your business is really good at and doing well and where you're going. So it actually does help support your business planning and articulating your vision as well. I know small businesses don't often do so well on the articulation of their objectives, so this is a great reason to do the application as well. Of course, upload your supporting documents, and once submitted, you'll receive a confirmation email, and then the council will contact you after the decision date, which will be clear for you. So you don't need to follow up before the decision date, but if you are starting to wonder why you haven't heard back, you can contact and check the status. Attachments matter, so you must have your lease, insurance, business plan, financial, and quotes. Again, business plan, if you've got one written that you can happily upload, please do. Otherwise, you can just draft a sort of a project plan that's aligned with the criteria. It's between the assessors. So if you've got IP concerns, of course, that shouldn't be an issue, but you're welcome to remove any intellectual property that you may not want to reveal before you're fully functioning or whatever it might be. So use PDFs, not screenshots or blurry photos. Label things clearly, because we have to download the files to look at them, and we want to be able to make sure it's aligned with your application. Again, attachments strengthen your claims, so don't, if you've got anything, you can do that. So avoid last minute submissions with anything, or if it's going to go wrong, it's always going to go wrong in the last minute. So maybe set yourself a deadline before the actual deadline to make sure it's done. If you are adding it straight into Smarty Grants, it's got a save option, so make sure you save. Otherwise, you might lose some questions in the process. However, the question fields are compulsory, so if something's happened, it will tell you that there's no text there. And it's saying to use Chrome or Firefox as the better. Obviously, it's more compatible with these browsers, so avoid Internet Explorer on mobile. Tips for smooth submission: create a checklist. Actually, you can this is a good time to use AI to create a checklist for your submission utilizing the information provided, and then make sure you've answered all the bits. As again, repeating, but draft offline first, allow buffer time, proofread before uploading. We're not going to not give you money if you've made a typo, but obviously, a poorly written in terms of grammar applications are obvious, and so that may make us wonder if generally the care taken in the grant application is a reflection of capacity for a successful business. So just if one typo doesn't matter, but it's consistently poorly written, no grammar, I've seen those. You kind of go, okay, I don't think that this is sort of quite to standard that we want to see in the application process. So you will get a receipt to save as well and download your submission. Okay, so, stating the obvious here, so everything is great and you can submit with confidence. All right, I will get back to Smarty Grants in a second, so we'll just finish off the presentation and then discuss certain things in other screens. So common pitfalls and support, mistakes that cause people finding and where to get help. So scheme guidelines, surprise ineligibility. Yeah, so if you haven't checked the guidelines and then you apply and then you realize you missed a critical eligibility point, so that's usually the first point elimination. Missing documents. Look, I want to encourage you to have all your documents, but there's been instances where we would approve a grant pending that document. So again, if you had it already and forgot to upload one, it won't necessarily cost you the entire thing, but just make sure you have them all handy in case it gets requested to approve your grant. Vague answers which miss the assessment criteria, off-topic responses will just not give you the scores that are needed to get the grant. And of course, if you're rushing and pasting things in the wrong boxes, will be it won't then be answering the questions we're looking for. And here's some examples of weak versus strong responses. We want our shop front to look better is weak. We'll repaint the facade, install down lighting, and add planter boxes by February. So you can see it's factual response. It's not, again, we're going to install state-of-the-art, most stunning facades that have ever graced the city of Melbourne's footpath. Okay, just stick to the facts. Locals enjoy our store. We see a lot of grants saying that you're the best and, everybody loves it, but some evidence, even if it's a survey of customers like this example, we've surveyed 20 customers and have 2 letters of support from nearby traders. Perfect, okay? We might use a local contractor, too vague, and then this is, if it's a project that's going ahead, obviously you're showing evidence that it is going ahead, and then you would know how much it's going to cost. If you're planning for the future, you would be, more future planning language, but supported by quotes. Before you submit, second set of eyes, a trusted colleague, supplier, friend, or advisor. Check for clarity and completeness, spot vague and unsupported claims. Review your budget, logic, and quotes. Ensure you've attached all required documents, and a second reader can make a difference between a good application and a great one. So this is a good time to give Small Business Mentoring Service a little plug. So our business mentors are good at reviewing these things. We can't write the applications for you, but we can make sure that you are aligned with criteria to the best of your ability and that everything looks right, at a glance before it goes off. So there's a discounted rate for our services that's available through the council of $80 a session. So this is where to get help. So if you're having Smarty grants, technical issues, there's that information, business funding team. So everything that I've deferred back to saying if your individual case doesn't fit this, but is a business case to potentially still get support, please speak to them. And then there's also the business, the concierge that can help you with just general questions. And final words of encouragement. It says you already done the hardest part, showing up and getting informed. So yes, thank you for coming today or watching this replay if you are not here and watching it again. So it shows that you're really keen on these grants and you want to put your best foot forward. So this is fantastic. Of course, the writing part can be a bit daunting, but like I said, if you're just sticking to answering the questions and understanding the weight of the criteria and the overall purpose of the grants, then it's actually not that hard. Writing and grant helps you clarify your strategy, which is what I mentioned earlier. Even if you're not successful, you've strengthened your business. As a business mentor, I often suggest to people that come to me saying, where can they get grants? I say, have a look at all the grants that are available to you. Even if you don't meet the criteria this year, knowing that it's an option, and again, they do change sometimes or there's different programs, but fundamentally for repetitive grants like this one, if you know that it's an option, you can then adjust your business strategy in order to align with that goal, okay? So to get the grant money for next year. So it might be that, say, if you don't align, but you've got a project for growth, you don't do it this year and you apply to do it next year and, you know, do other things in the meantime, for example, right? So it's good to know it's there. It's good to practice applying. You'll know why. The grant assessors do leave notes on why you weren't successful. So if you're pretty sure, they won't automatically give them to you, but you can request them. So if you were sure that you should get the money and you didn't, you can actually get some insight into what the problem was. So yes, support is available, whether it's free from the council or a session with SBMS. Please consider that. And now you are better equipped for other grant applications as well. And so permits matter. So before funding can be released and before work commences, you must hold all relevant permits if required, or provide evidence that the permit applications are in the process. So this is, for some of you, it might be that chicken and an egg situation, because if you're not getting a shop front without, say, this support at this point, and you're not going to need the permit. So usually you will get an indication that you've been approved for the grant, and then you need the permits. So at that point you can apply. The permits are not funded by the grant, but obviously if you know you're getting the money, you should be able to apply for the relevant permits. Again, if you're not sure what permits are necessary for you, you would then speak to the business concierge at the City of Melbourne. Not all commercial leases require permits, so just you'll have to investigate that for your individual cases. Yes, so if you're asked to submit a permit in order for your grant money to be released, and you don't, we'll delay the money release if you don't have the grants, but obviously if you're in the process of applying for permits, then you might be eligible to get the money sooner rather than later. If you don't have the permits ever, then the funding can get cancelled. All right, so let me just now take this as an opportunity to show you some of these other little bits that I wanted to show you. Present something else. Let's have a look at this. So this is, hopefully you've all seen this, and I'm guessing you would have in order to be here for this presentation. But the main thing I wanted to highlight is if you click on this link, which for me opened in a new tab, so I'll have to share it separately again. Bear with me. Second. Okay, so this is when we're talking about Smarty grants. So when you just click that button off the page that I just showed you, you actually have direct access. So if you start a submission, you will have to register, which is just an email and address and your portal that you log into. And then you can preview the form and download the form, which is great. So it makes it really accessible, and you can have a look at all the different elements so you know that you're prepared. And if anything doesn't seem like you can answer it, again, you can call the concierge. Here's the mention of SBMS. And you can book. We've got over 140 mentors that you can choose from, including myself, in order to help you with applications and business in general. And we've been working with the council for many years on these grants, so we have quite a bit of insight. And yeah, so you can download it, review it. It's all really easily accessible. Now, let me just show you one other little important thing, this criteria business that I would keep talking about. Got the guidelines. So that was also in that business grants homepage. So when you are looking at any grants, including these ones, so the council has a purpose, an overall objective that they're trying to achieve to improve the experience of people living in this and visiting the City of Melbourne. So any grant round will always have a greater purpose that aligns it, and they achieve that through these grants, okay, because it's a measurable way to achieve an improvement. So this grant aims to support businesses to grow or set up in Melbourne, which is great for people looking to potentially do manufacturing facilities. I would expect that there would be an element that they would be welcoming of that. Encourage new ideas, products or services, accelerate local and global solutions, promote new ways of working, drive social and environmental benefits for the community, add to the city's unique, vibrant business offerings, strengthen Melbourne's position as a hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. So in your answers, it's really a good idea to make sure that you are emphasizing how your business or your application is supporting these aims, okay? The grants align with the Melbourne Economic Advantage Strategy for 2030. So this is the pillars. Have a close look. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because it's little writing and you can read it yourself. But essentially, your application in one way or another is going to support these pillars. Okay, your business, your application, and so forth. So before you start writing, make sure that you know what these requirements are, and then in your answers, as close as possible, align what you plan to do with these objectives. And that's where the marks are, okay? And or you can read all this, a lot of this we've covered today as well, but I want to show you the criteria page, which it's always, it's not hidden, it's always transparent. So again, the streams are outlined, and let me just find the criteria. Funding options, oh yeah, I should emphasize, so you've got the 10,000 to 25,000 with no co-contribution, or you can ask for 25,000 to 50,000 if you can show that you can fund 25% of your project. So that's great for, you know, slightly larger businesses that can or are going ahead with a project and can contribute 25%. And that's why, again, there's no clear definition of how many grants are available, because it will basically go down the highest scoring applications, get access to whatever they're asking for, and then it goes down, down. All right, so this is the all-important assessment criteria. So it's specifically, as an assessor, we will be looking that you've answered this, and here's the weighting. So 20%, 20%. So these four elements are equally as important as each other. And then we are looking for community impact. And then if it's a priority sector, so priority technology or experienced economy sector. So have a look at whether it's in this document, or you might just have to have a look at the policy, City of Melbourne policies, but what are the priority sectors? And if you are aligned with those, then great, you get more marks. And your application standards, obviously that you've written well, you can demonstrate skills and experience, that you're, are creating a viable, economically sustainable project. Obviously, social enterprise is an element in this as well. So, have you got the skills and experience to deliver on that? But the four major ones is a business proposal, obviously what the project is doing, strategic alignment with, again, the City of Melbourne strategic directions that I've just highlighted. So yes, you need to have an alignment. And so how do you show this alignment? And that's by highlighting the alignment in your answers. Financial viability and stream specific. So that's where we're talking about the different little four streams that we had here. So if it's a startup, expansion, social impact, or shopfront occupancy. All right. So that's probably it in terms of what I wanted to cover. So I'm just going to go flick back to the presentation slides. And then we'll open it up to question time. Okay, so questions. So we've covered all of these elements. And yeah, thank you. And there's so have a look at what business support the council has. And then we've got, if you will receive these slides, so if you could please spend a few minutes giving us feedback. It's always important for us to make sure that we're providing the right information and helping you along the way. And any issues especially would be great to identify. And there's the code if you go to the Menti website to the survey. All right, so let me put my face back on and I might stop sharing. And all right, so I'm happy to answer questions. I think just putting your hand up. Thanks, Steph. Pop your hand up. Adrian's got a question.
Hi, Kat. Thanks for the introduction of all this and explaining. It's been really good and useful. So I'm a startup founder of Beta Docs. We're essentially like an AI company that helps companies apply for grants. So literally something like this. You mentioned previously that it was obvious when AI is using applications such as specific adjectives. Curious from like your perspective, are there any red flags you look for as an assessor maybe?
Look, at this point in time, there's no red flags specifically. Like as a university lecturer, I can tell you there is red flags that automatically I'm like, okay, you're done. But from an assessment perspective, I think it's more that vague general answers that we don't like from an AI perspective. Like you can just really tell that it's not answering the question directly. And it just goes back to even the human not answering the questions. But with AI, it will always look like it's skirting the subject, you know, like it's just not directly answering, it's sort of fluffing up an answer, not making it sound good, but it hasn't specifically answered it. So that would be more evident, and the issue is that you haven't answered the question. So if you can feed the AI what you want to say and then make sure it's answered it in a way that you want to say, but it helped you write the sentence, that like we're not going to complain about that.
Got it. So basically seeing the AI tool focusing more on structure, formatting, compliance.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So even if, of course, you know, I would use AI to write a application, but I wouldn't like, and that's where I always even say to my students, it's like, don't use it as a helpful tool. Don't use it to do the whole thing for you, because it's really clear when you haven't done it, right? So I would apply the same logic for, AI use for grant applications.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't want to overtake the session. I'll send you another email with more questions, but thank you.
No worries. Anyone else? I think I'll just check the chat. Oh, yeah, we've just got a thank you. Hopefully I answered all the questions so well rather than left you baffled and confused. But I think, look, the key information here is align with the criteria and include in your answers how your project or business specifically supports the cities of Melbourne, excuse the language, the objectives of the city of Melbourne, because that's what they want to do. They want to achieve their objectives. So if you can help them with that, then they'll help you help them.